Welcome to today's presentation. I'm Chris Jones, the COO at Nymad, and we'll be talking a little bit more about Nymad soon. So today's presentation will be covering license optimization. Now, most people are aware of best practice licensing techniques, but what we're looking to cover today is optimizing the entire cost of Oracle ownership and not just the licenses. Also, we'd like to take 2 points in advance of the presentation today. Now, I understand that the audience is quite a mix of technical capability. We've got people responsible for contracts, etc., but we've also got some kind of fairly technical DBA people in there. So what we're looking to do from today's presentation is keep it at a level where everybody can understand the points that we're looking to make without taking it too deep. Also, second point for you is this presentation is going to deliver no silver bullets. What it's about is taking a step back to see a different approach to how you do things. It might be things that you're already considering or you're already doing yourselves, but by taking that step back, it's given our clients the opportunity to examine the wider picture in more detail. Okay, so before we start, quick disclaimer. Nymad works under non-disclosure agreements on all of our license optimization engagements. So what we mean by that is any output from the engagement is for you to make your decisions from. So we're not covering any entitlement within these engagements, only your deployment. And the second point we'd like to make is that the presentation will anonymize names because we're working under non-disclosure agreement with our clients, but there'll be plenty for you to use and take away yourselves to go back and apply in your own instances. So in terms of an agenda, what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look at Nymad, why it is we've got involved with the nature of optimization engagements, why it's important and how that message is developed over the time. We'll look at the reasons why organizations buy their licenses. Now, it's either through new requirements or as a result of the dreaded audit. We'll then take you through the optimized approach as to how it is we actually approach things and deliver from there. And then we'll go through some considerations in order to make things as optimized as possible for your particular deployments. And hopefully you should have seen some war stories and case studies that should have prompted you to view this presentation in the first place. If you haven't seen any of those up until this point, they can be found on our website, which is nymad.co.uk, or alternatively on our YouTube channel, which is Nymad TV. Finally, we'll look at some questions at the end to bring everything together. So a quick intro into Nymad, just to let you know why we're doing things and how we've got involved with this. So Nymad ourselves are a managed service practice with a mission to reduce cost and complexity in Oracle environments. The founders and directors have been working in the Oracle market for over 10 years now. So we've seen Oracle, when it used to be the dominant database player, to where it is now, which is strategic IT vendor with reach into all areas of IT. So before we used to deal with database, Oracle Business Suite and middleware layers. Now we're looking at servers, storage, SaaS, cloud, etc. So as a result of that, in order for us to continue to give the expert advice that we've been giving around the database layer, we need to understand about storage strategies as well as data growth and your plans for virtualization and how they kind of come together. So if we look at a typical approach as to why organizations buy licenses in the first place, it's generally built around a license-centric approach. So the business will require more licenses for a new application. You'll then need best price purchase from your procurement team. You'll sometimes define an SLA with IT. Now, we understand that that's to do with the maturity of the organisation. You'll then request a server, and generally it matters not to you whether it's physical or virtual. You just expect IT to deliver against that. The next point is to commission the new server, buy the licenses from Oracle. 12 months later, you'll get a license renewal and you'll move forward. So that's a typical approach as to why people would need licenses in the first place and generally how they go about buying those licenses and commissioning those licenses. And it may be because of a result of mergers and acquisitions, it might be expansion of the company, or it might be that you're moving into new areas and you need new applications. So this presentation is assuming that there's a maturity when it comes to a purchasing organisation. So you do have separate purchasing departments that you would work with, but not necessarily. So if we then take that forward, what it is you actually go to move forward. So as an organisation, you'll go to your purchasing department and they will search for 3 quotes possibly for software to get you the best price. And that might be because you've got frameworks in place, you might go to tender. We then look at how it is you go about streamlining your hardware provisioning. So again, generally people have got things in place through their frameworks and tenders whereby they're fairly confident that they can get the best price hardware to deliver what they need to be doing. It may well be that when it comes to actually delivering through a virtual machine, you may have automated provisioning techniques using, I don't know, maybe a gold image, and that minimises the amount of professional services and cost on IT in order to deliver against it. So all in all, what we are is you're 99% confident as an organisation that you've got the best price possible on all component parts. You've gone to your frameworks to get your best quote for licenses. You've gone to your frameworks to get your best hardware quotes, and you know that you're delivering against those in the very best way possible. Now, the second way that you would potentially look to buy audits is as a result of an audit-driven approach. So when it comes to an audit, you're either working with a partner or you're working with a vendor directly. As a result of that, you will end up filling in some form of sheet which explains what your entitlement is versus what your usage is. And that sheet will be the driver towards what you need to buy and how you need to buy it. So you'll identify a difference on occasion between the entitlement, i.e. what you've actually bought, and what you're currently using. So as a result, if you're non-compliant, then potentially a form of optimization you might consider is understanding what the most appropriate metric is for you to use. Then similar type approach, off to procurement, get your 3 quotes in order to deliver. So again, we get 3 quotes for software to make sure we've got the best price. We don't have to worry about purchasing hardware because it's already in place, because what we're actually looking at is a delta between what you've currently got versus what you're entitled to. And there's no systems to deploy and no services because they're already there. So as a result of the fact that we don't have to worry about hardware and we don't have to worry about services, we're now 99.1% confident that we've got the best price possible on all component parts. Now, I know that some people are going to be ahead of me here when we start talking about component pricing. However, if we spot the flaw, now I'm sure all of you have bought tyres for your car at some point, and you will all have and you will all know where the best pricing is for tyres to move forward, whether it's a local garage, whether it's a quick fit, or whether it's something else. And the same again, when it comes to fuel, it changes. This week it might be Morrison's, next week it might be Tesco's, week after it might be Sainsbury's. But either way, you know where to go at any given time in order for you to get best pricing on your fuel. And then something as small as a headlight bulb. I had a car serviced recently and the main dealer wanted £24 to change a license plate bulb. I went to Halfords and it cost me £2.99 for 2 of them, so I've even got a spare. Now, if we look then at where the flaw with this is, if you want to buy individual things, then it makes sense to buy them in the most cost-effective way possible. But if you take a step back and have a look, if you wanted to buy a car, such as the BMW in the slide there, you certainly wouldn't buy the individual components to that car. Of course you wouldn't. You'd look at the whole thing, and because the whole thing makes much more sense. And so it is with Oracle licensing and Oracle deployment. Okay, so if we look at the optimized approach, taking this step back, nothing's bought for fun. Nobody buys hardware or software because they think it's a good idea. There's generally a reason for doing it, and that reason for doing it is at an application level. So as a business, you have business processes. Those business processes generally need applications in order to manage and run. And those applications need various elements within them in order to ensure that they run. So what we look at the applications and we start taking inputs from key stakeholders. And those inputs are around what performance does the application need? What level of resilience and availability does it need? If you look at someone like a global online retailer, such as Amazon maybe, then they're going to need a lot more availability than standard bricks and mortar businesses. We then start looking at security. So what security does the application require? What functionality does the underpinning technology stack around that application deliver? What functionality it requires? And most importantly, what the cost profile is altogether. More often than not, when you have a conversation with somebody around availability, then everything needs to be available 24/7. And it needs to be 3 nines availability, or 4 nines, or 5 nines, or 6 nines even. When you start understanding what the cost of that is, that's when things start moving backwards, and where people then start saying, actually, what I've got is potentially good enough. Now, what we need to ensure is that the delivery capability of the applications match what's the agreed sign-off, and everybody's aware of the cost and everybody's aware of what it is. Now, if you look on certain occasions, in some instances, you don't get a choice around some of this security functionality, etc. So if you're using an Oracle financial system, then that's fine, but you're going to have to use an Oracle database underneath. So therefore, you've got the functionality built in. But you will still have choices around security, resilience, availability, and performance, etc. So we know that when we buy new, it would be fantastic if we could take a greenfield approach. So if you had nothing and you want to deliver the things that you're looking for, then this is a way potentially where looking at the performance and the availability, etc., will come up with an optimized position. However, we rarely find a greenfield situation. People already have things in place. So the purpose of the engagement is to understand what you currently have, what the ideal position would be, versus what's the most appropriate based on what you already have. So therefore, we look at existing capability, we look at infrastructure costs, we look at, and this is an important one, any additional licensing costs. So whether it's from your operating system, your virtualization, hypervisor layer, etc. Then again, professional services cost. It may be that something can be done far cheaper if you use product X or product Y, but if it's going to take 200 days to implement, and then you're going to be permanently bringing in professional services in order to upgrade and maintain, then that's going to be a problem for you. We also look at your operational support capability. What are you doing now? What do you need to do in the future? And how far do you need to move in order to take you there? And then finally, one of the most important elements of it is the cash flow side to it. Now, all of us have seen business cases which may give a 3 to 5 year return on investment. But if there's no cash flow to deliver now, that you're going to struggle to be able to deliver that. You need the money in order to move things. Now, what you may consider in this case is financing. Financing solutions now will cover hardware, software, and services as well. So that might be something that you want to look at. Okay, so when we move into application-centric optimization, so this is an approach that Nymad take when we deliver these engagements, but it's also things that you can look at yourselves in order to build a plan in order to deliver against it. So the first thing that we spoke about before was discovery. So that's all about understanding what your applications need to do versus what they're currently doing versus what the business would want them to do. In some instances, the optimization isn't always about cost. Yes, we like to reduce cost because that's generally why people move forward on this, but there have been certain engagements where we've actually increased cost because as a result of doing this engagement, we've understood that there is a requirement for resilience or availability, which isn't currently there within the customer. So the customer is willing to pay more to get the applications to do what they need to do. So this is all about working with the business to match needs aligned to what was sold or in some case demonstrated. So as a result of doing that discovery session, the next element that we look to bring forward is a plan, which is a high-level architectural plan. And within that plan, you should understand what your go-to architecture diagram looks like, a set of prioritized actions in order to take you there. And really, you should be putting professional services estimates against them as well, because you need to understand what it's going to cost you to get to where you need to go against what it is going to save you in order to move there forward. We then split our engagements into 2 extra sessions, which will be the same for yourselves, which is a realise. So effectively, we take the plan, We provide the services that we required, and then we deliver against those. So we can either work with you to provide those professional services, or you can do them yourselves internally. Or you might want to consider getting somebody that's done the optimization for you to do project management and sign off. Or alternatively, we work on engagements where we'll provide a plan to a client. The client will then go away and do the things that need to be done in order to deliver against it. And what we'll potentially do is come back in afterwards to ensure that it's still in a compliant position and sign off against that. And then finally, we move into the manage. We don't believe that this should be a single exercise. Keep an eye on what you're doing and how you're doing it. So therefore, whenever you're doing things moving forward in the future, you can always understand what the most appropriate delivery mechanism is. So that might be outsourcing the technical managed service, might be ongoing technical consultancy, or it might be outsourced software management. Okay, so we start looking at some considerations around this, because as we said before, not everything is greenfield. So we start looking at database additions, and whether this is Oracle or whether it's Microsoft or whether it's something else. So if we look, Enterprise Edition is the most feature-rich database edition. It's the highest performing database edition in lots of areas. It's the world's best, and it's priced accordingly. So what we would suggest is understand what database functionality you require. So a lot of companies, because it's easier to consolidate, whether it's on hardware, whether it's on software, whether it's on database edition, for instance, it takes less effort to manage one version of a database. However, that less effort comes with an increased costs. What you might like to do is consider where your best cost position is. So you might have Enterprise Edition databases running with Standard Edition. So today's servers, back 10 years ago, an enterprise server had redundancy throughout and generally was identified as an enterprise server and had a price tag to match. Today's commodity servers can quite easily run Standard Edition or Standard Edition 1. They've got redundancy built in the server, so that kind of makes sense from there. Okay, the second point that we'd like to bring your attention to is around virtualization. Now, I'm sure you've all heard, don't mix Oracle with VMware. It will cost you a fortune. Absolutely not the case from our perspective. Using any form of virtualization should be considered the same as using the old physical hardware instead. If you think back to the old days, if you had a primary system running on the one hand and you wanted hot standby to 10, 20, 30 different systems for failover, then you would have been expected to pay for all of those and license all of those. It's considered the same in a VMware environment. So if you don't know what you're doing and you don't understand the ramifications of what you're doing within a VMware environment, then yes, you could end up with a larger bill than expected. But as with everything that we've covered through this presentation currently, if you understand where you want to be, you know what business benefit you're going to get from what level of availability and resilience and failover, then there is no reason that you shouldn't use VMware or any other hypervisor to deliver against those requirements. Now, for instance, you may be required to split your server farms out so that Oracle can only exist within a specific server farm, or you may like to do it just on single standalone physical and standby environments. But either way, plan for what you require and license accordingly. It's when you do things without thinking through the ramifications, that's the areas where you get yourself into trouble. From our perspective, you might want to consider OVM versus VMware as well. So OVM is Oracle's hypervisor. We find it very good. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's feature rich. It compares against VMware. But the biggest difference, or the two biggest differences, is one, it's fully supported from Oracle for running Oracle databases. And the second point is that you can actually pin cores. So that will potentially save you some of your licensing headaches. Another area where we keep coming back to is in around storage. So we work with a number of clients that generally have an enterprise storage strategy already in place. And that might already be in place with a vendor, such as NetApp, such as EMC, or somebody else. So within a procurement function, you may have negotiated the best possible relationship with an individual vendor because I don't know, you know the person well, you've worked with them. So as a result, you might find that for a particular vendor, based on your relationships, you're confident that you can get that storage cheaper than you can any competitive equivalent. Now, if you look at Oracle on Oracle, so Oracle database storage on Oracle storage appliances, if you're using Enterprise Edition and you've got the ability to use something called HCC, which is a compression technique, you can achieve between 10 and 50 times compression on storage from your Enterprise Edition database. Now, I'll be honest, I think 50 times compression is probably a lab-based calculation, but for certain types of information and data, you should be getting around 10 to 15%. So suddenly, if you do the maths, if you're getting an enhanced discount of 30% from your preferred vendor, but by using Oracle storage, you can get 10 times the amount of storage in place, then suddenly the cost comparison between the two is different. So that's what we mean by taking a step back, understanding exactly what it is you're trying to do versus what's in front of you, and then working on a future plan, coming back with something that's going to make sense. The final point to look at, I guess, is hardware. We've all seen it. For those of you that aren't doing regular hardware refreshes, and that's something which has been par for the course over the last few years, if you look at what a like-for-like replacement commodity hardware will do now, due to Moore's law, or even quantum computing, which is coming out nowadays, what you can do with today's hardware is so much more than what you could do with something 4, 5, 6 years ago. So suddenly you don't have to buy a supercomputer to be looking at consolidation on a small level. It may well be that the equivalent of what you bought 5 years ago will actually run twice as much now as it used to before. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention through this presentation. If you want any more information at all, then please feel free to reach out to me at chris.jones@nymad.co.uk, or alternatively, check out our website, or if you'd like, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Google. Thank you very much.